here, but I arrived just over a year ago from Bath in England, but originally from Yorkshire. Kind of today is a little bit about what I've been doing as an artist in residency, and a little bit about how I got here. Because I kind of got a bit of a, kind of working in printmaking now, but kind of come in a bit of an arc. I started my life at a college very much like this, York College of Arts and Technology. I did a one-year course in design, basically to try lots of different things before I decided to go on and do a textile degree. So I did a textile degree at Glasgow, and then I went on to the Royal College of Art after that. So just I brought in a few bits of fabric. Specialised in embroidery eventually, but also in fashion. Like I had a fashion show and everything like that. But just brought in a few bits of fabric today to show you a bit of my journey. So these are all like, I suppose, printed with metallic pigment, and then they kind of used a soldering iron to burn through the fabric to make this texture kind of thing. But they're just kind of very old to me now, but they're kind of, I suppose, part of my history. So when I first went to Glasgow, in my first week of college, we had a visiting lecturer like myself who basically turned up and said, she's like, welcome textile people, or ladies actually she said, there were 3 guys there, and she said, I'd like you all to take the opportunity as it's the beginning of term to go across the road to the architecture building and find yourself a husband, because if you break new textiles, you're not going to earn any money. It'll be a hard life. So I would just like to say that's bollocks. I've made plenty of money if that's what you want out of life, but out of textiles, and it is possible to do whatever you want to do and be whoever you want to be, and it's just about finding your niche in life and working out how you can make things work for you. So I started off with these very uncommercial kind of things, you know, like this was a had a waistcoat with Jesus on the back and things, and skirts that were sort of based on reliquaries from churches that were sewn with like thousands of mouse bones and kind of weird things, which, you know, I had a very uncommercial collection, but it got lots of press, I guess, and lots of opportunity in the beginning, but I decided, obviously, that I didn't want to go and work for somebody else. I wanted to do it myself, which turned out to be probably the most wrong decision, because, you know, although I had like lots of clothes that were being exhibited, and people were like, can I come to your salon and try on an outfit? And I was like, well, you can come to my front room, but it's about back in. You know, but eventually I got a grant from the Crafts Council, and I bought some equipment and I started sewing, and I did lots of work for exhibitions, and had lots of press, and you know, I was doing some sort of basic printing, like this kind of thing, I suppose, just drawings from a natural history museum that then printed on fabric. And while I had lots of press and things, it didn't really pay my rent. So despite enjoying producing lots of lovely work, I had to eventually go get a job. So I was doing things like this, which were kind of fun. And then my first job I had, for the first year, all I did was paint animal skin, like leopard and cheetah and tiger and all that kind of thing. And I was good at it, but because I was good at it, then they kept me on it. But I was working in a textile design studio, so all of this kind of thing was kind of put aside. And I did that for a few years, and then I decided to go and work in Paris. I was working in a textile studio, so I got myself a job in fashion, and I went to work in this sort of very upmarket kind of ladies wear kind of brand. I haven't bought any of their clothes today, but basically it was very black and white, and you know, you can sort of see from all their mailers, like this is kind of my embroidery designs on the mirrors and then on the garments and things. But that was kind of fun. I did a lot of time in India through that. Basically, I would design things in Paris and then I'd go out to India and do the collection and work out, this is my embroidery design, where will it come on the garment, and sort of work out for the collection before the shows, sort of placement, that kind of thing. But for that, I enjoyed my time in Paris, but I guess it wasn't really me. When I arrived and first day, they sort of said, "Oh, you're not wearing black." And, "Oh, you haven't even got Prada shoes." So, by the end of my 3 years in Paris, I did have Prada shoes and some black clothes, but I didn't actually have any black clothes in my wardrobe. And I was also freelancing for a textile agent, and at the same time as doing that very tasteful work, my work was also ending up in Japan on some kind of weird kind of 80s throwback kind of stuff, which I guess is a bit more me. So I decided to leave my job in Paris, and I actually got a job in LA, but that didn't happen in the end. So while I was in London learning to drive, I started doing some work with a friend who was setting up a company, and we decided to go in together and sell our own work. So we were basically designing fabrics and then going to New York to sell them, and then Paris and everywhere. And basically what turned out as us just selling our own work became a company with 8 employees, and we did trade fairs twice a year in Paris and New York, 3 times a year, Florence twice a year. I ended up being not only the director but also the head of sales. So every month I went to New York for a week to sell the collection, and I had a team of designers who basically designed full-time, and I sort of set them projects and they would design for me. In the beginning, I used to do a lot of work myself, like embroidery was my speciality, so a lot of these are like swatches that have been around the world several times and nobody wanted them because they're the bad ones. So that's the kind of thing that I was doing. I mean, you can tell that something like this is never going to have a market, or a very small market. But, it's fun to do, and it's the kind of thing that draws attention to you on a trade fair as something fun. But you're much more likely to sell something like this, which I was doing a lot of. But what I ended up doing was selling all my work and spending like 9 hours a day sewing, and then doing the sales, and in the end it was too much. So I decided that I would also start, we also did knit because my business partner designed knitwear. So we ended up also designing a print range as well. So this is the kind of thing eventually that we started doing. It took a little while to kind of work it out. I mean, this is knitwear. This is viscose rayon, some racking and things like that. So there. So here, this is 2 knits and a print. But our idea was that we could merchandise the knit and the print together quite well, and that our idea was also to try and be as commercial as possible. We didn't really care who we sold to. We weren't fussy about designer labels or anything, because everybody paid a set price. Everybody still really pays a set price, which is probably about, what is it now? About maybe like $700, maybe a bit more than that, Australian. And basically, each print you do, it has to be completely unique. You can't have, you can do a group around an idea, but you can't have repetitive elements, because if that sells to Zara and it's also in David Jones, then Zara and David Jones won't be happy. So you have to make sure that everything's different, but we kind of worked in a group. These are all, again, odd things that didn't sell, so they the bad ones, should we say. But I always used to do a lot of things that maybe push the boundaries a little, like in each collection you would have a few groups that wouldn't really sell, but get attention, like this kind of thing that was more photographic. When I first started out, you had to paint every design, like every colour is flat colour on a piece of paper. The world has changed so much now that I can take a photograph of the floor, put it in my computer, put a geometric pattern over the top and sell it, and it's on a bikini in LA, you know. It's amazing how things have changed. When it used to take you like a week just to paint one design. When I went to work in a design studio, was the beginning of printing textiles by hand, and we probably had to do 20 a day, and then, you know, not 20 a day, 20 a week, which is about 5 designs a day. And even when I had my studio, my print designers were doing 5 designs a day, and we used to print it digitally. So we would do the designs on the like maybe do a drawing, or take something like this, a bit of embroidered cardboard, scan it, put it into repeat on the computer, and print it on fabric. And we'd print like a big long roll of fabric each week, maybe like 20 meters with different designs on, and then we'd cut it up into sort of suggested garment shapes. Some of these are obviously knitted and some are printed. So the knits, we used to use a lot of marls, a lot of lightweight yarns, lots of colours, but the bottom line was to try and make them producible, and that's what got us some sales. So this is more cruise wear, which is like, rather than just summer and winter, you'll discover if you do fashion that there's like, you know, at least 5 seasons a year. There's, you know, a season around Christmas, which is called holiday, and then which is a bit more sparkly, and then there's something after Christmas, which is cruise, where people, in theory, go on cruises, or there's winter break holiday. That's in the northern hemisphere, shall we say? And that tends to be like a little sort of naval inspired, and then it will go to like spring, and it kind of you know, goes on throughout the year. So, you know, each season we sold knit and print together. Knit is sometimes harder to sell in summer because obviously it's a sort of, it's hot, you don't really want to put on a sweater, but it's like thinking of how to turn a cable into a light weight item or a cover up, you know, or, you know, we did a lot of crochet, very good selling crochet, things like this is also a knit, but it's got like a little end of metallic in it, which gives the cable a bit of sparkle. Like, these are just photographs of some chains that I put on the table, and then, you know, sort of just took a photo and then put them into repeat, but that's somehow like the freedom that you can get with using a computer, which never existed when I started out. Like, when I went to college, they got the first computer just as I was leaving in the design studio, so it's a very different world now, but, you know, we still use lots of hand techniques. This is crochet with punched leather and things like that, just mainly for trims and things, because it's less expensive if you just do the neckline. Again, just a sweater with some marl. So everywhere I used to go on my trips, because I was always on the road, I was had to come back each week and give the designers a new project. So I'm always looking for inspiration. I'm shopping all the time. I have to know all the stock in all the shops. So if one of my customers said, "Oh, I saw this little red top in Zara," and I'd know exactly which top she was talking about, and I could say, "Yes, we can do that neckline for you next time." And da, 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 da. So you have to always be on the ball with what's happening in fashion. And you know, at this trip I was in New York, it was raining, you know, it's like, took some photos, then, you know, bring them back to the studio, asked the design team, like, come on, can you knit me this sort of wet New York scene, and sort of they come up with some, beautiful ombre stripes and things. These actual photos, we actually just printed onto fabric just as they are, just glued them up and sold them like that, which sometimes works. In the beginning, I would say printing on, like photographic printing was very expensive, but now it's much more accessible. The only problem that I would say with it is that it's best printed on synthetic fabrics, and not everybody wants to wear synthetic. So again, just a few sweaters, just thought I'd put in a few more wintry things, which are a couple of jacquards, but if you're going to do a jacquard, it's like thinking, how can you make it a bit more contemporary, or a bit younger, because everybody wants to be younger these days. Once again, some more wintry stuff. So clients, as I said, we weren't really bothered about who we sold to. It turns out that I can design a lot of prints that work on swimwear. I didn't know that before, it was never my market. It turned into a big market for me, especially in LA. Right, so eventually, after 16 years, I decided that I'd had enough. And I decided that enough was enough. I was tired of the clients and their client demands. Come and show me the collection at my house, come and be there at 7 AM and, while I'm doing my yoga in the yellow leotard, and show me the collection on the floor. People who had people feed them while they were looking at the collection. And it's just like, eventually it got too much, and I think the stress of having to, I probably was about $50,000 every month to pay everybody's wages and the rent and the shows and everything. After 16 years, I just decided that I was going to quit. So my business partner has continued the company, but I moved out of London. I had no idea what I was going to do. In my village, there was a little print studio, so I went down there and had a little play. So I've got some of these here, which I brought today. They're just monoprints, and I just thought they would be quite nice as fashion drawing kind of ideas. Basically, I've cut out a figure out of a magazine, or on a piece of paper, like a tracer onto a piece of paper, cut out a separate shoes, and then just put little bits of fabric on them, and then inked it all up and put it through a press. So it's just like cutting out a little shape, inking it up and putting it on the paper, but it's just a way of doing something quite fun. You can sort of get the fabric textures coming through, or some interesting silhouettes, but or you can play around with the ink more, just to make it more suggestive. But anybody can have a look at these. Some of them are quite fun, some of them are quite ugly. So I started doing some printmaking. I started doing lino cuts. A lady called Angela Lyon taught me to do lino. I have done one lino cut when I was at York College of Arts and Technology, and I haven't touched a piece of lino since, but I soon got quite good at lino. I enjoyed the process of it, because it's quite meditative, cutting the lino. So I started producing just some little things in the beginning. These are sort of in the studio, sort of basically a drawing, and then just carve it, and then you can print an edition, that kind of thing. Got a few prints with me today. So that's that kind of print. So it's hand carved and then it's printed. You ink it up the roller like this and print it. So quite like the letterpress here, it's the same process, put it through a press. From doing that, I had quite a few misprints and things, so I started cutting them up, and before long I started doing these collages that are basically layered prints and I've got something in between them to sort of make it more 3D. So I suppose that's about a year after finishing the textiles I started doing this kind of thing, using them for like graphic applications and things like that. You know, where they sort of add the text later. Even this one with alot was part of somebody's funeral service brochure thing. It's called. So that was fun. And from that, I applied to, well, there was a competition thing for a stately home in Cornwall that wanted to do a project with, somebody to do a project with the general public and the staff and the volunteers, something that engaged all of them, and it represented the property, but it also celebrated the 100 years anniversary of the end of the First World War. So basically, it's this old building here. Well, it's massive actually, that's just a corner of it. And it's was given to the National Trust as a monument, as a war monument. So I kind of found in their archives some correspondence between some First World War gardeners who were sent off to war and some gardeners who had to remain to grow food for the army. And the correspondence was all about, tell me about how the garden was and that kind of thing, and what's growing, and are the daffodils out, and so my first swallow today, and, you know, they'd sort of write back, and all of the correspondence was quite touching, because obviously they didn't want to tell you anything about the, what it was like on the front line, but they all wanted to know about the garden. So anyway, as my brief, I had decided that I would draw the flowers throughout the year. I would cut lino prints of each flower, so go out in the garden throughout the year drawing, cutting lino. Then from that I printed lots of flowers. In the end it was 16,000 flowers. And basically I printed lots of coloured bits of flowers on different papers. Every week I was printing new stuff, I was cutting new stuff, printing new stuff, and as the flowers happened throughout the year, so actually I got like a range of all flowers throughout the year, and so I had groups every 2 weeks. I had a session with people who were visiting, or the staff, and they'd all come in and cut out flowers, and they'd start and give stuff for them to take home, so that they could, I printed these envelopes, and you could take them away, and then they could send them back to me. And what happened was that it kind of became a nightmare, because basically people were like messaging me from like all over the country, like, oh, hi, where's the ladies from Lincolnshire? And we've a church group, and we'd like to join your project we've heard about. You know, can you send us some flowers? And people like knocking on my door at like 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning saying, I need more flowers, I need more flowers. I mean, it was interesting, like a lot of it like ended up people taking stuff for their disabled next door neighbour, or the friend who has cancer who's cutting out in the hospital because it takes their mind off it. It was actually quite interesting how it helped a lot of people, which I never anticipated. Anyway, one of the biggest nightmares that I never allocated time for was actually sorting out the flowers when they came back. Like, I had all these thousands of flowers in different colours. Tried to print the envelopes in different colours so I'd know what I would get back, at what time of the year it was printed. But actually, people took a bit of every colour all the time. So I started sorting it out in colours, but really it needed to be sorted out to assemble the artwork at the end into types of flower, which was a nightmare. But I got my mum to do it. So basically I made this giant artwork that wrapped around the room, that's made from as many of the flowers as I could use, and it was representative of the seasons in the year, and it had this wave of red, white and blue going through it with memorabilia that local people had brought in that I could photocopy and then might make some little sort of shrines within the artwork for people to remember their relatives and things. And so kind of, it was a very fun project. It was exhausting. It was difficult to assemble because it was in a National Trust building and you weren't allowed to put any nails or holes in the wall or anything, and it had all these spikes sticking out the wall that were for armour normally was hanging on. But basically it kind of went around the room, but and it was kind of like this, but it was really difficult to photograph because it was so dark in the room. And only that corner, which had some light, has actually got any decent pictures. Because actually the 3D things are always difficult to photograph anyway, but you need really good light. So, I put this up, I think, having left the world of fashion and sort of moved back to the country, it was the kind of time when I kind of was regrouping, but also it was a time of Brexit. It was a time when I was going to New York and the customers were telling me how excited they were about Trump and things like that. And I was just like, oh, I really can't bear this anymore. So that's kind of part of why I left fashion. But part of my regrouping was that I wanted to actually live in a community, or give to the community a little, like, create a community where actually I'd like to live. So I did a lot of volunteer work when I moved to Bath. I was sort of on the committee of Local Festival, which was like a festival that had like 40 events over a weekend, a long weekend in May every year. We had a lot of sort of volunteer work. This is the Church Harvest Festival, which is a beer festival. This is the allotments. I had a pumpkin trail that I designed but every year now it goes on. There's all the allotments put out pumpkins and the local people come. This was in West London just before I left, and I started this pumpkin trail, and we thought maybe a few hundred people would come, and 5,000 people turned up on the first night. Anyway, so I kind of got a lot out of doing that kind of community work, I think. So one of the things that I discovered when I was doing that giant artwork for the National Trust was that I discovered this little screen printing studio, but Otto, who ran it, decided that as he was German and his wife was Greek and it was becoming very difficult to live in the UK as an EU citizen, that he was going to leave and he was going to close it. So I ended up buying it, like remortgaging the house and buying the studio. So this is Marshfield Screen Print, which was my home before I left to come here. Basically, it was a screen printing studio with just a couple of large print beds, and this is my lovely technician, Sarah. Me and Sarah basically facilitated artists and designers to come in on a daily basis. They paid to use the facilities. Some people just came in to make screens, but mostly they came to use the table. And we also did some custom printing of things. So we used these big screen printing beds. I mean, it depends obviously if you're how big you're printing, whether you need to use the arm or not. But this is TV doing a Joni Mitchell print. So we had lots of design, like Charlotte, was a regular, came in every Friday, Charlotte Farmer. She has some lovely work, but lots of people coming in to print, sort of multicolored print. Sarah, the technician. We also did like some custom print work. That's me actually printing some money or gift vouchers. We printed a lot of things like bags and things that other people didn't want to print. Like one job we had was to print like 300 foil blankets, which I had to unwrap. But the people got at the end of a race, but basically you had to unwrap them all and print them and then fold them back up and put them in the bag. Didn't make any money out of that. I also taught lots of people how to print. We had a couple of afternoons where we'd have regulars who came in. It was more of a social thing for them rather than like actual printing. And then just quite often on a Saturday morning I'd do a print class, or Sarah, my technician, would often do a one-to-one. So also this is my work. So I've got all these print facilities, so I was printing things. Some things were, in the beginning, textile-based, I suppose. Sort of like these. This kind of thing. That print there. And some kind of big floral things. Also got like, these are just basically just putting the plant onto the glass and exposing it onto a screen. Sort of printing some layers, so that's like the background and then the plant, and then this has got an extra pink layer on the top. But, you know, just doing some grasses. It's just, if you've got print facilities at your fingertips, you can have lots of fun. So what's next? So I did a lot of these kind of carpet patterns that were based on textiles using more contemporary colours. And then I kind of started Mr. Nightingale as well. So Mr. Nightingale was my idea to make a stationery kind of, or paper goods kind of company. So I was hand printing cards, or printing some, like, I've got a couple of samples here, but basically some things were commercially printed, like I just designed these with my 3D artwork, and then photograph them and get them printed, and then other cards were, I suppose, sort of hand printed, these kind of things, just like 4 colours or something like that. Screen print masses of them. These are the butterfly cards with fold-out wings, like those. But anyway, I was doing a bit of that. It kind of was taking off, but then my husband decided that he wanted to move to the other side of the world. My husband is from Geraldton originally, so he wanted to come home. That was COVID. It was kind of a difficult time for everybody, but he was determined that he would come back, so sold the print studio, gave up Mr. Nightingale. Didn't know that it would work here, but now that I'm looking at it, maybe could. Kind of put this slide together just to show that, I mean, this is kind of my artwork, just playing like, it started with a little class that I did with some mums, cutting out silhouettes and just printing them, like paper silhouettes, laying them on a piece of paper and cutting out the shapes, and they became, you know, sort of these little cards which were kind of a bit like art, and then they sort of moved on to become products like First Class Cab, which designed for my sister. So this is the kind of thing that, like Christmas was a boom time, cards that were produced, you know, they only cost a couple of pence each. You know, sort of designing in line-up cut, like some design from having these drinks mats and door wreaths. Who knew that you could make more money from gift tags than anything else? These kind of coasters. So this little number, he was part of my little, one of my community projects. I've done an art trail, and I'd sort of printed like some posters to go into some local shops' windows, and children had to find all the clues and write down the animal and at the end there was 10 clues and there was 10 winners who all won an animal print. It really took off and kind of showed me that there's a whole new market that I didn't know about, which was kids. And mums who bought stuff for kids, and it kind of reminded me that as a kid I did love art and colourful things and beautiful kids' books. And my N is for number. Nobody in Bath knew what a number was. So it started on a little Australian wildlife kind of little project. So I started printing these. Some of them I've got like 14 colours in them, I suppose, which is a bit excessive, but the kind of, I guess it's the kind of stage where I got to in screen printing by the time my husband said it's time to go. So I never got to complete my alphabet, but I thought I'd find some idea to finish them, but not yet. But it was also kind of experimenting like this. It hasn't been out in the daylight, but it's actually printed with a fluorescent ink that lights up in the dark, not fluorescent, glow in the dark ink, yeah. But it's kind of, I printed it as the base layer, so it actually comes through the colours. But just a fun experiment, but yeah, printed in addition, so there's 50 of them. What else? So I suppose that kind of brings me to when I moved here, Letterpress. So, sorry, I'm taking the time to get to Letterpress. Letterpress is, I decided to come here, I saw the night class advertised. I thought it would be nice to go into a print room. I came and did the night class with Phil. This was our first print. There wasn't many people in the class. We had a fun time, and he told me about the Artist in Residence program here, and I thought, yeah, I've got time, I've not got a job, I can do 10 minutes printing. And it's actually amazing because, you know, I was doing this, I suppose, in the night class, and you know, you can get custom shapes cut out and all sorts. It's amazing, all the facilities at your fingertips. But it is amazing because in life, you generally, once you start working, you never get a chance to just print for like 10 weeks. Like, you know, just everything else is, you know, the toilet's broke, you know, the exposure unit needs some repairs, you know. Yeah, you know, you're too busy running a business and things. I was just here and I was just printing and I was just having fun. It was kind of experimental in a way that I didn't know anything about letterpress, and some of the words that I've used were like new words in my vocabulary as I moved to Australia, that I never knew I'd need. I sort of explored the way that you can layer the inks. The inks were new to me because they're quite different, these oil-based inks that you can use here in the studio, where I've been using sort of water-based acrylic inks. These are oil-based inks, and in a way they're more flexible or more pliable, and they don't dry as quickly as screen printing. Usually the ink dries very quickly, and you have to keep printing so that it doesn't dry in the mesh. Whereas this, you can actually decide if you don't like that bit and rub it off from things, which is quite interesting to discover. So I was just kind of playing with sort of layering prints and just kind of, you know, letting some of the textures come through from the old antique blocks, and also sort of playing with colour and the type. You know, this one is actually a combination of lino, because I actually cut this as the lino block to print. But we also discovered that, you know, playing around with the background colour and playing with you know, creating a texture or a colour ground, or you know, if you mask out the edges and then you just burnish, like just get some ink on a rag and just rub it in, like you can kind of apply colour. So this was printed white, and then I've rubbed a bit of blue into it, but also how the ink sort of sticks to the print underneath. Like you can see this page here, like the ink is stuck there but not there on the sides. But it's just interesting playing like experiments. So some things like are just completely by chance. This kind of thing, like I printed this alphabet, I thought, oh, I'll print a little edition of this, like maybe 10. So I printed 10, and then I realised that actually this S and this X are upside down. So I actually, well, first I tried scrubbing one out, but what I got is this smoky effect. And so some of them I overprinted, but others I kind of did this kind of smoking alphabet. But you know, it's just having the time to play, and you know, I didn't actually print it properly with the letters the right way around. But you know, part of what I was doing was printing an alphabet archive for myself to use in the future. So if I print this alphabet, I can scan it and I can use it on the computer, and I can turn it into something else at a later date. Or if I wanted to make a poster for my artist in residence, then I could scan the letters. So, but also, you know, you sort of, you've done the letters, you think, oh, printed it in blue because that'll, or dark colour because that'll scan nicely. But also then it would be quite nice to have a pink one, but then also I can use the pink on top of the blue, and then you get a little shadow effect. But when you've got time and facilities and free paper and ink, then you know, you can just keep going. So I always have worked in a way where I'm quite prolific and I do a lot of work in, all the time. It tends to end up being like just lots of bits of paper, you know, sort of 100 ideas for like gift wrap textures, or you know, printed in different colours, just cut out of lino or something. Or you know, stacks of postcards. You know, I've got the whole. I had in Bath done a whole number sequence based on stamps, printed on postcards, which was screen printed. So each one was no more than 2 colours. And I printed quite a lot of those, which is where the numbers and the letters come from here, that are in the cage windows. But you know, sort of playing with type, thinking about, you know, not really thinking about additions, I'm mostly thinking about getting some nice textures and things that I could scan and use for other things. So obviously, well, this Coca-Cola, whatever it said underneath, had a spelling mistake in it. So this was the start of my graffiti wall. Because I'd spelt Melaleuca down here with an A and not 2 E's. Anyway, so I started overprinting it and just rubbing in some colour. So I had printed something like 10. So then I had 10 that I was just, every time I was printing, I was just maybe using that M, just stick it on one of the prints. And so that's how they kind of built up. But it's just having the time and just like not being too precious about it. And then towards the end, trying to sort of resolve it so that it ends up actually being something. These, because they've had the edges masked, kind of come out quite nice with the clean edges. I guess there's these. These were printed a bit like this K, with some giant wooden letters, which you can print on the Colombian. And they were just some little plywood letters that I inked up that I found in Spotlight for $1 each in the sale. So I bought an alphabet, apart from the letter L, which I have to make at some point. So this one's here, I printed the log letters over this, it's a stripe that I just made with a roller. So just playing with the stripe, and then once you've printed the letters, actually rolling on top of them afterwards. even to a point where they disappear. But, you know, for me, like, it's not a waste of paper, I'll just print on it again now. So, also, obviously, I've done a lot of collage in the past. This is printed on some paper that I just coloured, and then I've cut up some pages. I'm quite enjoying this kind of thing at the moment, like printing over the surface, so you're getting some little sort of paper folds and things. It also relates to, I've started doing some letters recently made out of Tetra Pak with the folds in the thing as a printmaking kind of thing, where you basically cut out the letters out of the unfolded pack, and then you ink it up, and it kind of has some lines in a bit like this. You know, it can be really simple print. This is one letter on just a stripe colour that was rolled out first, and then I just stick one letter on. But it's one of my favourites. This is a combination of, in the background, it's got a little bit of text, and then it's had a red rubbed on the top, or maybe it's had a white print and then a red rubbed on the top, and then it's had 2 layers of liner printed on it, and then it's had a big S in the white, which doesn't seem to be very opaque, even though it's called opaque white. So I did a couple of these just to show you how you can take one little alphabet, which is, you know, a little card like one of these kind of things. I just took something like that and put it into repeat, and then, you know, you can change the colour to white, you can layer the white on the blue, you can make it a little bit less transparent, you can play with the size, you can add a little bit of colour in there, you can cut the whole lot, you can then change the hue, you can put a layer on the top. The idea is that, you know, once you've got all these little bits of paper and these letters and things, that they can become things. You know, if I had an agent and I sent these off, like, I couldn't have them all with the same font and the same letters, but, you know, that's only a morning's work, I suppose, or less than. You could sort of create a whole range just from a small piece of work, which is kind of what we used to do in print. But when I had a print studio. But so this is this collage, and then I put it into a repeat here, and then I've layered a layer of that, but slightly opaque or transparent over the top in a different direction, and stretched it. You know, that probably came before that one. And then, you know, that is the same as that, but that's just had the colours change, like just by sliding the hue changer. This one is this design just mirrored, like in different directions. It's a bit clunky, but you know, you could make it a little bit better if you spend some time on it. And then I've just changed it to colorized it, so it's just blue. And then I've layered it with itself with a sort of semi-transparent layer. So, you know, you're sort of getting more of a tie-dye kind of effect, which always sells well. You can then even like cut letters out of it, or, you know, just take it back to where it started. This is the previous one with this sort of pink stripe that's on the poster. There's a layer underneath the black print from the other print with the little letters. But yeah, lots of fun if you want. I suppose I'm kind of now towards the end. I've been doing these kind of sort of collages from papers, which basically at the end of the day, when there's some ink left, are just rolled onto some book pages, some old books, and I've been sort of just kind of cutting them up and collaging them. Something that maybe I would quite like to continue. I can sort of see it turning into its own little exhibition. Obviously, it's the kind of thing that, as a surface pattern, it could be printed and sold on, like sold as a commercial design. The only thing that you would have to consider is the copyright of the material that you're using. Right, so since I moved to Australia, my happy place is outside, except when it's hot, which is most of the time. It's cooler at the beach, so I've spent a lot of time at the beach in my first year, you know, finding interesting things that you don't get on the Yorkshire coast, and sort of drawing a lot of things. I started doing some lino because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with myself. Didn't know if I had the energy to start a screen printing business. Like, so it takes a whole lot of energy to basically start a company and do all the social media and be the technician and all of that kind of thing. I have got a space in my shed if I ever convert it to make into a screen printing studio, but it also costs quite a bit of money. Although I sold my business, I sold it quite quickly because we moved to Australia in a few weeks, and I didn't basically make any money out of it to buy a new studio, like to start a new studio. So I could mortgage my house and start again. I just got to wait till I'm ready if that's what I'm going to do. But in the meantime, I've started doing lino again. I've got a little etching press at home, and I've also recently become a member of Swan River Print Studio, which is in Applecross, and it's a small professional studio with a Colombian and a large etching press, and it's kind of, there are a few print studios around Perth, which this one I find is quite professional. It's very clean. It's only got 12 members, I think, so you have to pretty much wait till somebody leaves or dies to become a member, which, you know, I've been on the waiting list for a year, and I just last week found out on Instagram that I'm a member. So it's me on the Colombian there, happy again, with my excited face. When I was, after I finished my big project in Cornwall, I actually had shingles in my head, which paralysed all that side of my face, and I couldn't even walk, like it took all the balance away and everything. That took me a year to get over, so not quite writing myself, but I'm trying somehow. Anyway, so I'm doing a lot of these kind of corals. I've bought the inks that you have here, and I've bought the same kind of shiny paper, which is something I would never choose. And the ink is really shiny, but I'm really enjoying it because of its ability to manipulate the ink. It's the same ink that you use here in printmaking, I believe. You know, it's the idea that you can start with a piece of paper, usually, like I bought a lot of pink paper, but you might start with a piece of, this is actually white, I think, but anyway, put various layers on the background before you print it on it. It's something that I've got from doing this kind of printing here. It's, what I enjoyed about it is like doing the textured ground and then printing the lino on top. So this one is the lino printed on a blue ground, and then I've rubbed ink into the print afterwards to colour it. It could be any colour. Still experimenting. This one is just the lino block, and it's in black. It's got this, but it's also in blue. This is that one, I guess. Last year I carved like 30 different corals and seaweeds, so I'm just having fun printing those at the moment. And that's about it, I reckon. You can see all the way at the end. I've brought loads of stuff so you can just touch. Feel free to go through the fabrics or have a look at, I brought like some of the numbers and things like that. There's postcards and cards and whatever. These prints which might be fun for classroom students and water printing and stuff on the way.
So everyone's about to hustle. I know it's 12 and we've hit our window. Please put your hands together for Dom. please do stick around if you want to come up the front and
If anyone's got any
inspect.
questions, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, and come and chat to Dom in person. He's going to stick around for a little while to go. And thanks for your attendance, everyone.
Yeah.
So,